Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. I hope everybody's doing awesome. Let me know if my audio works because I'm known for starting a live stream and having the audio not work and then being like, whoa, what's going on? Or not even like publishing the stream and going live. Like I've done that before. That's weird too. But in today's video, we're going to talk about, how to create a resume when you have no experience. I know when you're starting out, it's one of the things that I struggled with the most. And also, after creating a resume, my resume was broken and it didn't work. And I was also trying to figure out why it wasn't working. And there's little tricks and tips, and I'd like to share those things with you guys on today's stream on how to basically write a resume when you're just starting out and have no experience. And we'll talk about more on the stream, but for now, I just want to say hello to everybody jumping in. Hope you guys are doing amazing. Let me know if my audio works before we really get into it. And more importantly, thank you for joining me on this amazing Saturday. And let me know in the chat where you guys are joining from, or some of the pain points you guys have where you're on your journey. But in today's stream, we're going to talk about writing a resume. And the first thing I'm going to do is first tell you a little story about how important a resume is. And before I show you my resume that I currently have, I'm also going to show you my old resume. So here's my old resume, right? And uh, please don't. Okay, that's my different phone number. I got to change it, but it's okay. You could email me, guys. Just don't, I'm trying to be open with you guys. So I'm showing you my actual old resume, which has my contact information and email. But here's my old resume. And to some people, they might say, oh, it kind of looks okay, right? I mean, like, what's wrong with it? So guess how many responses I got giving this resume to people? Just guess. It was not much, like zero. So even though I have a resume and it has some experience here, in terms of responses or people being like, you know, um, let's kind of get back to you and kind of see what you're doing. This resume was not good. It really did not get any responses, and nobody contacted me because of this resume. Now, to show you on the high note, this is my current resume, and you could tell by my new updated phone number. Please don't call me right now. But yes, respect my privacy. I'm just sharing you the reality, the real things with you guys, right? I'm kind of showing you how that I'm actually doing this stuff. And again, I want to show you my new resume, and this is already looks significantly better than the resume I just previously showed you. And this resume, for the most part, contains the same information that my old resume has. But going from this one that got me zero clicks, I guess, or zero kind of people reaching back to me after seeing this resume, um, when I change it to look like this, and right away a few things stand out, as you could see that this resume is very readable. You could really quickly in 2-3 seconds take a look at it and kind of see what I'm all about. And so in today's live stream, I want to talk about creating this resume, talk about why this resume works. I want to talk about how you can utilize, let's say, your personal projects that you have. And I'm going to use these as example. This is a basic HTML and CSS JavaScript site I did. This is a little pandemic tracker with React and some API that I did. And this is my new application that I'm working on currently. But I'm going to show you how to talk about the projects that you are building for your portfolio and use it in your resume to showcase that it is your experience. I know it's a double-edged sword. We all want to have this real work experience like I do have, but if you're just starting out and you might just have, your basic experience from before you got into coding, like I did some marketing, I uh, sold insurance, I own my own business. Yeah, but you want to have development experience, right? And today I want to talk about how to create a resume where you could have something that looks like this, showcase your experience, even though it might not be your work experience. It could be experience working on your projects, but nevertheless, it is experience of learning the tech. And I mean, don't just make stuff up. Like, you should have stuff that reflects what you've done, even if it's personal projects. And those personal projects, like I said, they should be, good looking projects, something that you're proud to showcase to show off your experience. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to talk about your experience in resume. We're going to talk about how to structure your resume and how you could combine and have a beautiful resume like here. This is not a beautiful resume, but this resume, and have it combined with the 3 projects that you did in your portfolio. Now, if you have no work experience and you haven't built any projects, what experience are you going to share, right? And so the most important thing for you guys is to be honest about where you are and talk about the things that you actually done, because at the end of the day, people will find out. People will find out what you know and what you don't know. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you at least have 1 to 3 projects for your portfolio, and then take what you learned from that project and write a resume talking about the things that you've done in those projects, and talking about and showcasing your experience and the tech used. And so that's what we're going to talk about this video. Now, before we continue, I just want to say that when you're sending out your resumes, you have to understand that there's a certain expectation for the type of resume you need to do. You have to think about, there's manager somewhere that's constantly looking at resume. They're used to a certain expectation of what to expect. They're used to a certain format, and you have to imagine that person probably doesn't have all the time in the world. They probably have a little bit of time, and what they want to do is make a quick decision as quickly as possible based on the resume that you're looking. So when you're writing a resume, you have to understand that what your goal is writing a resume is to make sure that your resume makes the person's job who's reading it much easier. So you want to stand out really quickly. You want to highlight the most important things about your experience, about your education. If you do have an education, like for instance, you got a CS degree or you went to boot camp. If you're self-taught, don't put your education because it's irrelevant at that point. Talk about your experience. And so we have, just saying in chat, we have Brian jumping in. Kin, good to see you. Northern Chim jumping in. Great to see you guys. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about anything today, the whole point I do these live streams live is because I want to answer your questions in real time and give you some real, tips that you guys could apply. So what we're going to do, we're just going to jump in right away. And if you guys, jump in later, I'll keep going over back and talking about things. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go over the resume that I had initially. And I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to show it to you guys so you could have it as a contrast to the resume that is currently working. So first I'm going to show you a type of resume that doesn't work, even though it looks like a resume. And then I'm going to talk about the reasons why it doesn't work. And so let's kind of jump into it. And if you guys have any questions about anything, let me know, because I'm here to answer your questions. So this is my original resume. This resume did not get me any replies from sending it to people. Like for instance, if I send it to a company like IBM, like I would not get a response, or I would get rejected. Maybe they ran this resume through an automatic reader and it just did not pick up any of the key terms that they were looking for. And so the first thing is you have to understand that when you're presenting resumes, a lot of times people will use automatic readers, and you want to make sure that your resume, number one, gets a good score and has the right keywords that people are looking for. Second, you have to understand that if it's not an automatic reader, it's a person who's looking at your resume. Like if they look at this resume, besides getting a headache from it, like this is not the easiest resume to read. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. This kind of shows the objective, what I am, looking to do to obtain position in front of developer in professional setting, blah, 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 tech used. And they're kind of like, okay, like, then they have to scroll down a little bit and they're seeing my experience. And I'm going to talk about how to write about your experience in just a little bit, but I just want to show you the bad resume that does not work. By the way, if you're just jumping in and you're like, this resume is but ugly, because it is. It's a bad resume format, and this is the first thing I want to start with. And so as you see here where I worked, and you see I have this just paragraph. It's like a paragraph. Nobody wants to read a paragraph. It just takes too much mental effort. If you're a hiring manager and you're going through people's resumes, you're not going to spend time, even though these are short paragraphs, trying to figure out what's going on here. And just by looking at this resume, even though it has the correct information, the formatting alone makes this a terrible resume. And when I tell you this resume got me 0 people checking me out, it got 0 people checking me out. And hey, big man, Beta, what's up? Good to see you here. And so take contrast just on the formatting point of this. Look at this resume, how super easy to read, really short on top. All the stuff is bulleted point, which is super important to have. My contact information really quick. The skills of all the tech that I'm using, it's right here. Very easy to read. You just easily go down the list, and in a snapshot within 2-3 seconds, just by looking at the skills, you could see like, should I read the resume farther? And because this is with bullet points, and again, we're just talking about the actual format of the resume, because of the bullet points, look how easily it stands out. It's very easy to kind of get a glimpse. Do I want to continue looking at this resume or not? And so I just wanted to kind of show you from the standpoint of just readability alone. If you look at this resume and the flow here, I mean, talking about what I did, how I did it, it's not broken into like bullet points, which already makes it harder to do, tech used. And so it's just the flow of it. I'm not saying this is super terrible, but this resume got me 0 people reaching back out to me. It's only until I got a template and I used the template to help me to at least visually know how to organize my resume. And so the visual organization, where it makes the job of someone to be able to take their resume and read it really quickly and make some sort of opinion of you within 2-3 seconds, is the most important thing. So if someone is used to looking at resumes like this, imagine every day people looking at resumes and hundreds and hundreds of resumes look like this. This is the format they're used to, or something similar to this, and then they see something as ugly as this, they're right away not going to take this resume seriously because it doesn't fit the norm of what people are used to. So number one, before even talking about what keywords to use, what and how to write your resume, understand that formatting matters and makes a big difference. So by finding a format that is visually appealing, which makes sense in terms of what people are looking on day-to-day basis, and makes it very easy for people to be able to get a glimpse of what your experience is super important. And by the way, we'll talk about how to write all this stuff in a little bit. We're going to talk about how to optimize it, but I just wanted to talk from the visual perspective. And before we continue, I do want to kind of show you some other examples. And you could, of course, Google yourself best web developer or computer science resumes or what have you. But I just wanted to start with that, where we're taking a look at the fact that visual presentation matters, even though the information is the same. And so this resume that I had before got me 0 callbacks, whatever, because it's not formatted in the way people anticipate your resume to be. And so if you look here, way cleaner, much better, already makes me look more professional than my original resume. And only when I formatted my resume to be this way, also we'll talk about the keywords, we'll talk about using them in your text, and then how to write this. And before we do this, I'm going to show you some examples. And let me say hello in the chat here. We got Engine Boy, also discuss about the way to say to introduce yourself, questions when being asked at the interview. Yeah, we'll get there. Today we'll just work more on the resume. Once I get all my points made about the resume, we'll talk about that other stuff. We have Jose, and we have the one and only John Smilga from Coding Addict. Man, love you. Thank you for jumping in and saying hello. He's super amazing. If you guys don't know who Coding Addict is, best courses on Udemy, just period. And also amazing YouTube channel, a lot of free great lessons. And so we're talking about resumes. So again, if you're just joining us, this is probably very important, because if you're just starting out and have no experience, you want to know how to create a resume that looks nice and professional like this, based not on your work experience, but let's say using your projects that you built. And here's some of the projects that I built. This is a basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript project that I did. We're going to talk about how to write about this in your resume in a way that looks professional. Here's another project I built, which is using React and Pandemic API that basically gets data. And here's my new project that I'm working on, which is a full CRUD with authentication application. And I'll show you how you could write about your, and again, don't call them your personal projects. These are projects that you're building. And when you're building projects at home, you should build them with the type of integrity as if you were building them for somebody. Don't treat your personal projects as like toy apps. Treat of them as something you would give to a client. So you want to make sure that they look good, right? And you're proud to showcase them. And so that's number one. But going forward, right? Talking about the format of your resume matters, because just because some of you guys are just joining in, I just quickly want to repeat myself here, is that if your resume doesn't follow the standard formatting like this one is not, people who are looking at resumes all day, they don't want to waste their time. So if they're used to seeing such nice, beautiful looking resumes like this one, and I'm not saying it's beautiful because I'm saying I showed and had a recruiter go over this resume for me, and she said it looks amazing, and if I was looking for a job, she would definitely take my resume and get me some positions. Thankfully, I'm not looking at it for a job right now, but I just wanted to share you, just from the sheer standpoint of presentation, right? It makes a big difference. So that's number one. So if you are looking to create a resume, you have to understand that you have to follow industry standards. You have to, I just got to read it. Man, Tailwind UI looks very sharp. Yeah, so I decided for this project to use Tailwind and actually go one step farther. I'm using a theme that I actually bought from Tailwind. It's not cheap, but since I already spent the money, might as well put it to good use, which actually brings out a good point that just like on this resume, presentation matters. Just like on your web development projects, presentation matters. And so kind of John brought up like a good point here, how like, wow, that Tailwind looks real nice. So I'm going to show you here for my first project where I wanted to really showcase that I understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is straight up vanilla JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, right? This is responsive. Very important that you understand the basics. Once you build one or two projects, this is also CSS I made myself, but the CSS here is pretty simple. I didn't make the graphs. I used the library for that. Before someone's kind of like, how did you make this graph with CSS? I didn't. I used the library, and same thing for the map. I used the library to do that, but the basic layout, it's still vanilla CSS that I did myself. And then for a next application where I really want to showcase the functionality of JavaScript and this other kind of, and this is still work in progress, but I just wanted to kind of show it to you. We have authentication here once you log in. We have our teams, our users, and stuff like that. You could create a team, what have you. But the reason presentation matters, if this application looked really ugly, and again, still work, and I realize I'm not showing my screen to you guys. If this application, this is, by the way, the application that I'm working on. Here, let me log out so you can see the reference here. So if this did not look pretty, nobody would care about the underlying JavaScript. Yeah, I always forget to switch screens. Brian, thanks for pointing out. And Engine Boy, I love you guys. And so, yeah, if it doesn't look pretty enough, like, or visually pleasing, people will definitely not take you seriously, which is sad, but it's how people do it. And talking about our resumes, it's the same thing. If your resume visually doesn't fit the norms of what people are expecting, like something like this, they're going to look over it and not give you a chance. And before we talk about and break down the sections here, let's kind of set the mood here by taking a look at, example resumes. You could literally just Google resume examples. I randomly found this site here, and so okay, and I'm just going to take a look at this one. So this is some examples, and I'm going to say, what's up, Luke? How you doing? How did your interview go? I hope it went well. Good to see you, man. And so if you look at some of these resumes, they talk about career objection. They have like this, what am I doing? Contact format, your education, you have it, your skills. But notice how, even though I don't agree with the way this is structured, it still looks kind of not clean looking as my resume, which is okay. I'm going to show you that they have a standard kind of this concept. They have contact on the left. They have education. This is one way to format your resume. Your education, if you do have an education that you want to highlight, notice on my resume here, the good one, I don't have education here because I didn't graduate out of college. I dropped out of college because for whatever reasons. It doesn't matter. But the point is, I'm highlighting the stuff that's important and relevant for me to getting a job. So as we're looking at these example resumes, they follow that kind of same template. They have the contact, education, or the skills. If you look at my proper resume, I have my contact. I'm not talking about my education. I have my skills section, most important stuff, non-technical skills, you know, communication, public speaking, whatever. And as you could see, there's a certain expectation when people looking at resume and what they expect. And so this is kind of the idea. Ah, man, that sucks, Luke. Super annoying. I have other pipelines though, and hopefully, you know, they rescheduled it and you just could go there again. And I'm glad that you have other opportunities, man. Just keep at it. And so coming back to this resume here, let's scroll down. Here's another example. Again, I'm not a big fan of too artsy stuff. Like, unless you're going, you know, even though this is not too artsy, like, I think this is okay. I think the problem I have with this, I guess, centered like this, takes a lot of real estate, but still good. And again, same kind of idea, you know, career objective, projects. And this is kind of like what I was saying, like, people could say, if you don't have work experience, you could talk about projects that you did in your resume. It's perfectly fine. So we'll scroll down. Again, same idea, career objective, work experience, education, relevant courses, skills. So this is another way to highlight relevant. I wanted to highlight it, not copy and paste it, to show your experience. And so looking at this, we kind of get some ideas. And so again, another way to format, but notice one thing that I want to show you here is how they're using bullet points. Bullet points make it easy for someone reading your resume to be able to make just quick glance to kind of get an idea of what you're doing. And notice how they're writing stuff in accomplishments, or they're verbing things like, okay, this is what I did. And this is what you have to do when you write your resume, is to use keywords that to help on the electronic readers, but at the same time, talk about what you actually did in good and very detailed way. By the way, if you're enjoying this live stream, smash the like button, not for me, but for other people in the stream who are jumping in. Hopefully you guys are getting some value out of it. But notice how they're writing stuff: constructed Angular components for custom facing web app, improved user page times by 3 minutes. And if you have a statistic that kind of show this, definitely talk about it, but don't make them up. You know, here's another example: implemented RESTful API in Django, enabling analytics team to increase reporting speed by 22%. So notice how they're literally talked about what they did, and that's super important when you're doing your resume. So if you come back to this bad example resume that I have, not my good one, kind of talked about stuff, but it's not like very like bulleted point and very concrete. Responsible for developing front-end UI and logic medical patient portal web application based on Versus Suite, Windows Desktop Edition, built with React. So I guess it's not too bad, but at the same time, if this was bulleted point and easier to read, that would make all the difference. So if you look at my my resume here, and I'm going to show you that compare, talking about same experience. Like, actually, let's use this as a case study. Same experience. You see, software developer engineer Versus Suite. I'll tell you how to write the resume if you have no experience. Don't worry about it. We're going to get there. I just want you to understand the most important things. And you want to, number one, make sure you're using bullet points. If you're not using bullet points, I don't know what you guys do. You need to do it in bullet points. And if you take a look at this example, responsible for developing front-end UI and logic and medical patient, blah, 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 it kind of says what I did, but it's not as clean and to the point as here. Let's take a read. Same company, same experience. Bullet point: wrote maintainable and reusable code using latest ES6, JavaScript, and React features. Notice I'm not only talking about what I did, I'm also using the relevant keywords: ES6, JavaScript, React, things that automatic reader is going to pick up. Then next, what did I do? Implemented React router for navigation and fetching dynamic patient data based on URL parameters on the hospital EHR platform. Utilize, the noise I'm talking about, really in concrete, utilize local storage to persist React application state to rehydrate the context API on site reload. Again, notice how this is specific. Not only is it using keywords that someone might be looking for, it's also showing it in a way that of things that I accomplish in concrete. Implemented user authentication, password reset, and identity confirmation in patient portal EHR platform. build custom UI React components utilizing style components, React hooks, and X's. Notice again, I'm hitting all the tech that I've used, and this is the proper way of talking about the things that you've done. Implemented custom controllers in C# to write data to our SQL database using Entity Framework and ASP.NET, and led the team in establishing Git best practices utilizing pull requests and code reviews. So notice here, I'm going to show you a bad example in a second from my previous resume that got me 0 people interested in me. I started getting callbacks once I had my resume formatted this way. And here's the thing that I'm going to show you here is same company, same stuff that I did. We took a look at the way you use bullet points and you talk about concretes of stuff that you did utilizing keywords. Now look at here. Same Versa Suite, blah, blah, blah. Same company, same stuff. Responsible for developing front-end UI and logic and medical patient web application based on Versa Suite, Windows Desktop Edition, build with React and Redux. Additional responsibilities could be. So this is not concrete enough. It doesn't really show the things that I took ownership and the things that I was building and creating. So again, coming back to best practices when writing your resume, make sure, obviously the name of the company, what you did, how long you were there. And again, if you don't have work experience, I'll show you how to do this without that. But the most important part here is that you understand the formatting, and the presentation. And notice how compared to the bad resume that I used to have, and after I made the changes, notice how this talks about my experience in concretes. And again, I'm just going to say here, we'll use this as an example, implemented user authentication, password reset, identity confirmation in patient portal HR platform, or you could here utilize local storage to persist React application. So talking in concretes, using keywords and bulletin points is a must. If your resume still look like this, and my resume looked like this for like couple of years before I figured things out based on what the best practices were, I wasn't getting any callbacks. So if we talk in presentation, this is not as easy to read, not using bullet points. And even though it has the same data as my new resume, this if someone were to look at it, they could get a really good snapshot of where I am in terms of my skill really, really, really quickly. And just to showcase this idea of people basically following the standards of what is expected, I randomly Googled some resumes here, and you could see here, this is similar format they're using: the contact, career objections, education. Again, notice on my resume, I don't talk about my education because I went to college for many years, but I never graduated, I never finished. So it's irrelevant for me to talk about something that I didn't finish. Instead, I talk about my strengths and what I do. Sometimes people talk about relevant courses, then their skills. To me, based on my resume here, I'm going to show you before I look at the comments here. Here's the way that I would structure my resume. And by the way, again, I will tweak this resume as required, but the most important thing, I had recruiters look at this. I applied to a bunch of jobs. Nobody kind of had issues with this resume, so I'm going to stick with this format. Number one, just your name, no picture, no nothing, and just brief thing of what you want. And so you need to kind of know what you want and what you're looking for. And this is probably not the strongest statement, but you could make it much stronger, especially if you know a company you're applying. You could make it targeted to that specific company. But I wrote, seeking a position as a software engineer in a professional setting that will enable me to learn new skills and have ability to utilize the ones I have acquired through my education and work experience. I have my contact information. Most important thing here, you need to have your email, your GitHub. I have my LinkedIn, and you could probably put your portfolio page. I didn't put my portfolio page. I don't know why. Maybe because I was in the process of reworking it and I didn't want to show half created portfolio, but this is what I have, and my phone number. Please don't call me right now. I'm on a live stream, guys. Then next, right away, I just show my skills, and I start my skills from the things that I really want to work with, and I put them at the top. And so you see I have HTML, CSS, SAS, JavaScript, React Router, Redux, style components, CSS modules, Strapi, Node, REST API, GraphQL, Git, C#, ASP.NET, CQL. I just recently got started with doing testing, so at some point I'm going to add Cypress and Jest, and unit testing, end-to-end testing to this growing list of technical skills. But the point is, it's keywords that will get picked up by automatic reader. Very easy to read. So if someone's reading my resume, they might look here. They'll right away look at the skills here just to decide should they read my resume farther. And if they look at the skills here and it makes sense in terms of the job I'm applying, they're going to take a look at my experience. And again, like I said before, the most important, um, Dennis Ivy, another amazing YouTuber. Dennis Ivy is like, dude, you're the best. And I love you so much. I gotta really, like, I'm so bad with connecting with people online, and we did a great show together. It's amazing. Check out Dennis Ivy's channel. What I like about Dennis Ivy, dude, he not only is smart with coding, but he understands the marketing and how to present yourself. One of the things that I would say with a lot of developers, especially new developers who are starting out, you have to understand that opportunity is not just gonna fall in your lap. You need to be able to market yourself and create that experience for you. And this is something that Dennis understands really quickly. And if you're looking for anything Python related, and I stuff in terms of freelancing, check out his YouTube channel. Check out what he has to offer. But he says, Paul, I'll hire you if you had a picture on your resume. I don't know. I don't know. I see what you're going there. I see what you're saying. The money maker right here. I get it. I get it. Anyway, but let's look at the comments here before we continue talking about best practices in resume writing and how to write one with zero experience. When I say zero experience, I mean you need to have personal projects that you could at least have some base experience, that you know the tech that you're talking about. But let's take a look here. And this is crazy. I did another thing for a big bank that will remain nameless. They looked at my ears to make sure no one was feeding me the answer over wire. Jesus Christ. Probably not a place I would want to work at if that was the case. But I totally get it with financial companies. They do have really a high level of privacy and all this other stuff that they have to keep. So they do have really like serious kind of expectations in terms of their hiring, and so like I'm not surprised, but at the same, yeah, that's kind of crazy. um, Alexander says, is it true that once you're a developer and you're having a couple of years experience, recruiting reach out to you, time with interviews, just plan a job offers? That sounds awesome. If so, yes, it's definitely true. But the hardest thing to do is getting that first initial job and then possibly getting your second job. And this is why I'm talking about how to write a resume that could help you get there. I also talk about other things like your LinkedIn, your profile, how to build your experience, how to showcase your experience, how to talk about your experience. But today we talk about the resume, and I'm want to make a point in terms of, if you're just starting on. This used to be my resume before. It got me zero people reaching out to me and saying back, because even though the information is very similar to what I have on my new resume, the presentation, if you're showing someone a resume, but the industry standard expectation for your resume to look like this, they're obviously not going to take you seriously. And this is my new resume that I've been using, been really successful, was definitely getting me callbacks. I had recruiters go over the resume. I asked them if I need to improve it in any way. They're like, no, it looks really good. Don't change anything unless you add additional experience. But before we talk more about the details, let me just chat with you guys in the comments for a second, for a little bit, because I do these live streams because I love chatting with you. And if you think that's awesome, smash the like button if you haven't, but you don't have to. Yep. And here's a good point here Luke's making. When you're starting out, using recruiters is an ace in your sleeve, and you definitely have to make connections with them. And Luke's saying recruiters are getting me all the interviews. Getting one was not easy for a junior. It's tough. Yeah, and 100%. And so we could talk about that more. But for now, I just want to kind of talk about the resume. And so here's one great question. So should you list the degree and jobs that have nothing to do with your software? So let me answer this question before we talk about the main point of how to write your resume when you have no experience. But should you list the degree and your job and you have nothing with software? So I'm going to be really honest with you. I went to community college. That's actually where I met Brian. We went to MCC, Manchester Community College, together many, many years ago. What, 10 years, 15, 12, 13, 14 years? I don't remember, but it's so long ago. But so I didn't graduate, even though I took some coding classes there. I didn't graduate. Also, I went to University of New Haven. I did not graduate. So by me showing that, look, I went to University of New Haven and I don't have a degree, or I went to MCC, I don't have an associate degree, that doesn't help me in any way. Now, if Brian has a bachelor's degree or you have a degree, you should put it even though it's not related to what you're applying. So if you graduated with communication and English, whatever it is, let's say I'm just using a random degree, you graduated with that, definitely put it after your skills. After your skills, because when people say you have a college degree, they at least know that you're serious about starting things and finishing things, even though it might not be related. And so I know a lot of people that applied to dev jobs where their degree was not computer science, but because they had a degree, it did help them in certain scenarios. So that was a great question, Brian. And let's see here, any other questions here? Man, Dennis, we love you. You're the best. Uh, Yep, and Dennis does have really good React and Django course if that's something you guys are interested in. Python is good. The one thing I'm gonna say, whatever tech stack you pick, just do that one tech stack. Don't swap and switch back and forth until you get a job. Until you get a job, you could get hired with Python. You get hired with React, like I did. You could get hired with PHP, like somebody else does, or ASP and C Sharp, like Luke is doing. And so, okay, so not too many questions. So let's get back to the crux of things. We talked about. So Alexander says, so Paul, looks like you're another person that like using LinkedIn, but when I look on Indeed, it looks like jobs that I could actually get with little experience. Would you put resume on both? Yeah, definitely put resume on both. Like, listen, just because I talk about LinkedIn, I don't talk about LinkedIn because just applying for jobs in general. You want to put your resume on Indeed, on LinkedIn. But the reason, and again, we're going to come back to talk about the resume because this is what the video is about, but I just want to tell you something. The point of LinkedIn is not to per se just get a job, but it's to build relationships with developers, recruiters, to grow your social network, to allow you to have more opportunities that come up. I'm going to be straight up with you. Majority of the jobs that I got hired were because I knew somebody somewhere and they were able to give me a recommendation. Obviously, having a resume is important. Obviously, knowing how to do the work is important, but you're always easiest path to getting a job is by knowing somebody that you know. And I will talk more about that in future videos. But for now, I just want to get back to the resume. So, okay, guys, here we are. We're looking at my resume. So we understand now. We understand that formatting is important. We understand that highlighting our strengths. We understand what we need to do. And you could always Google what this is not the one. Here we go. You could always Google like things like how to write a killer software engineering resume. There's plenty of killer, I'm using the words that they're using, killer options here. And so here they're talking about how one way to construct your resume, and they kind of showcase it here. Again, bulletin points is on. Talk about your education if you have it highlighted first. I think highlighting your skills is better. Again, I don't like this format because this makes it hard to read. I'm not saying this wouldn't work, but you could always find a lot of great articles on how to write resumes. So with that being said, there's nothing stopping you. But the reason why I wanted to share this live stream with you specifically is because I am a real person. I have real portfolio projects that I worked on, and I had a bad resume. This is an example of bad resume. If you're jumping in, don't be like, oh my God, this is the ugliest. I know this is the ugliest resume you've ever seen. I get it, but I'm showing it to you why you shouldn't do stuff like this. And now this is my resume that I use from day to day. And this is the resume that I had other recruiters tell me, hey, it's great, it looks good. You don't need to really change much at it. And so the idea here is that this is the format and presentation matter. So now we're going to talk about you don't have a job. How do you talk about projects in your resume? And because we kind of went through the overview of how to structure it, have what you want, have basic contact information, have the skills that you actually know how to do. It takes time. And then we talked about how to write about your experience at work using bullet point in concrete statements, translated Figma mockups into clean and reusable React UI components, right? That makes sense. It uses keywords and it really lets people know what I did. So once now we understand that, right? We understand that to get a job, you need experience, but to get experience, you need to do work. And so I want to show you this now. So I'm going to keep my bad resume there just for example. So here's the thing. If you don't have projects that you build yourself from scratch, I don't recommend using tutorials from Udemy as your projects. You can. The reason why I don't recommend it, you did not really do the work that yourself. You followed a instructor, and it's not going to serve you well, because if you use projects from a tutorial, when people start asking you questions about your project, you might not be able to answer. So it's very important to make sure that you are showing the real legit experience, right? You talk about, so guys, like if you go back on my YouTube channel, start from day one video and watch all my videos, you see my growth as a developer, to show you that this did not happen overnight. But I literally have the history of being unemployed and not having a web development job, to where I am today, where I work as a, software engineer, and I document all the steps that I took. And so the stuff that I'm telling you guys, I'm not making it up. I'm telling you from the mistakes that I made and the pain that I had to suffer through to get here. It took me like 4 years to 5 years to get here, right? It wasn't overnight, and I made a lot of mistakes. I'm not saying it's going to take you 4 or 5 years, because hopefully you're getting some useful tips from this live stream, and you are kind of applying some of the things I'm talking about. And again, you don't have to listen just to me, but I'm just telling you, I'm some dude on the internet who started being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA instructor. A lot of people don't believe me. That's what I did. I don't care, whatever. And I switched careers into software engineering. And so what I'm trying to tell you guys, the tips that I'm giving you, they're not from some hypothetical like, oh, I, you know, I just hypothetically did this stuff, and I just do this and buy my course. I don't have a course to sell you guys. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with selling courses, by the way. But what I'm saying to you, the point why I'm making these videos is because I don't want you guys to waste your time making the same mistakes I already made, because I already made them, right? Take what you learned from my experience. And I'm always upfront. I'm always showing, like, you look at my resume, it has my real phone number, so please don't call me. But I'm showing you real legitimate stuff and the stuff that I'm doing, because I want you guys, and I say I have a super chat. I've never gotten super chat. Wow, that's so fantastic. Let me quickly say, Alex, I love you, my man. Super chat $4.99 from Alex Stevens. You're the man, Paul. I don't know if I'm the man, but I'm just sharing with you the journey that I took to get where I am, without the fluff, without the nonsense, because look, life is too short. I just want to have some sort of possible, like, if one of you, like, and I already had people who gotten jobs, and they tried to give me credit. I don't think it's credit up to me. I think it's the credit because you guys did the actual work. But if one of you gets a job based on what I'm sharing with you, and your life changes, to me that's amazing. Like, that alone is good. But you have to understand that even though I'm on YouTube, my goal is, not to be a YouTuber. My goal is just to share what I learned, have opportunity to talk with cool people, and practice on YouTube, what I'm doing, and hopefully you could get some tips from it and learn from it. But anyway, coming back to, I was going to show you a video of me doing MMA, but there's no point. It's irrelevant. It doesn't help anybody. Who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about my previous job. So I was going to talk about writing your resume. Now, before we do that, let me set some stuff up here on my end. Let me go to Google Drive, and I'm going to just so something I could show you by example. By the way, guys, I love the super duper conversations you guys saying. So listen, I'm here for you guys. I'm not here, for like for no reason. So please ask me questions in the comments. I'd love to answer. And Alex says, definitely, I'm 30 and I'm trying to change the game up. Definitely going to apply these tips. Dude, I started at learning to code at 35, and I didn't treat it seriously until like 47, 8. And I didn't get my first job until 49. So you're way ahead of the game, bro. And you're definitely going to make it. And you could definitely do it within a year and a half, 2 years, realistically. I'm not going to say 6 months, 3 months. Hell out of here with that. I'm not saying people haven't done it, but I'm just trying to set realistic expectations for you. So let me open up a template here, and I'll share my screen in a second. Hold on a second. And a file, how do I make a copy here? I don't even know how to use Google Drive. I'm like a developer that doesn't understand Google Drive. What? No, I'm not saying it's difficult. I just, uh-huh, uh-huh. Let me back up here. Let me not new. Oh, okay. Oh, what am I doing? What am I doing on my screen? And look, I love this. Yeah, I'm 31 and coming from a career as a truck driver. 31, if I knew what I know now from watching videos from someone like me right now, I wish I listened to all the things that I'm saying to you right now at 31. I would have wasted less time and I would have gotten a job faster. So instead of getting a job at 39 and starting to code at 35, which you're already beating me by almost 5 years, I would have got a job by 37. You know what I mean? Like I would have saved bunch of time. And so yeah, like I hope some of the stuff that I'm sharing with you guys is helping you guys. And if you appreciate what I do here, I appreciate you guys here as well. So what I'm gonna do is kind of you know delete some stuff to have like a template. And I'm not gonna write out the complete resume, guys, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an idea of how you can do it, and hopefully get some ideas of kind of like what to do and how to think about creating your resume to help you get hired. And so if you have any questions in general, let me know. Okay, so now if you missed the beginning of this, by the way, I'm going to say this right now. If you missed the beginning of this live stream, we talked about a lot of valuable stuff. And by the way, you are always able to rewatch them because I always leave my live streams on my YouTube channel. And so don't worry if you missed the beginning, a lot of important stuff. But now we're going to talk about how to talk about the projects that you built yourself. And the preface here is like you actually have to build those projects yourself and not from tutorials that you've done, because when you're doing a tutorial, you're taking somebody else's experience and you're literally copying like majority of the code yourself and you're building that project. So even though you can, and there's no one ethically stopping you from using those tutorials in your portfolio, and maybe if you have 0 projects, you could start with those yourself, but you want to build your own experience. So own build your own projects from scratch. And bang, I really appreciate it, bro. Like I got that. I was there. I was like, legend. I've never been called a legend before. You're the best. Yeah, I love the community that we have here. I'm so happy to be part of your community, guys. Listen, if none of you guys existed, I would not exist. A lot of people, they're like, I'm the man. I have the community. They do. No, you're not. The reason anybody has anything like is because of you guys. And so like that's why I want to be part of your community. I love that you guys are here because you're the reason why I'm here. You guys build up. You're building me up by supporting me, like by showing up, by doing it. So it's not me, it's you guys. I'm just some dude who's giving you my opinions. But we're going to talk about the next step here. We're going to talk about I don't have job experience. We talk about formatting. We talk about how to structure your resume. But now we're going to talk about how to write it, and I'm going to give you some examples. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to um, you know, not fill out the whole resume because it'll take forever, but I'll hopefully give you a way or a pattern that you guys could follow in creating your own resume based on your personal projects that you built. And then the biggest caveat here, you do need to have some projects, right? That's like very important to kind of understand that. And hopefully they're your own projects that you made because that's your experience. If you build a project yourself, that's your experience that you use. So first of all, my recommendation when you're getting ready to get hired, I think you should have 3 types of projects. And before I show you how to talk about them resume, let me give you like a quick description to set the context. Now, your first project should showcase your basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So here's a simple HTML, CSS with some basic JavaScript website that I did, which is fully responsive, very important to know. I coded myself. And so the idea, what skills that I took away from here, I didn't design this myself. I literally saw an existing website that looked like this and I use it as a template. And my argument here is that as a web developer, most of the time you're not UX UI design guy. They have people that do that. So instead of focusing on how to lay out the design, what you should be able to do is to take a design from a Figma file and recreate picture perfect or as best as you can design that reflects what it looks in Figma or basically off a mockup. So an important skill to showcase on your first project is I could take a design, I could transfer it to HTML, CSS, I could make the website be responsive, right? I understand this concept of building responsive apps and stuff like that, and you're showcasing basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills. So the way I would talk about this website on my resume here, nope, I don't want to break this one, but where's my copy here? I would basically say, okay, this is a personal project I built. I'm going to say this is a portfolio website template. Not template, that's probably bad wording. Whatever you want to call it. I'm really bad coming out with names on the fly. So we'll say portfolio website. Whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. You know, and you could just say, front-end developer, like give yourself a title that, would build that project, right? So portfolio website, like you would have to come up with a better name or whatever. And then let's say it took me from April 21 to whatever the present or whenever I'm finished. So like I finished like, let's say May 2021. That was the duration that took me how long to complete that project. And by the way, that project should be deployed. And if you want to go extra mile, don't use lorem ipsum. Use like actual English, and then don't have this. I'm just using this on this example. Have like an actual .com, like legitimate, so people like see it and they're like, oh, it's actually a website that's up there and deployed, which is very important. Taking it from development and getting it to deployment, and we could talk about later in other sessions about that. And so the way I would talk about it, and I already have this first example, it's like, okay, I had a mock-up, and you could literally write exactly on what you did. I translated. Let me back up before we do that. Okay, so here's my personal project. Don't call them your personal project, but I'm just showing you how to talk about the projects that you did, not for work because you don't have work experience yet. You tried to get work experience. Count this as your work experience because it's something you learn. So the idea here, okay, this is built with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And so what I would do on my resume, I would add HTML, CSS, and I actually use Sass on that project. I use JavaScript. I didn't use React. So that's kind of where I am right now. I didn't use any frameworks yet, so we could delete it right now. So for my first project, that's what I used. And so now for that project, we write that relevant experience. Okay, translate Figma mockups into clean and reusable React component. Wrote clean JavaScript using functional paradigm, whatever. But the point is you write in concrete what you did. So let's make it simple. Like wrote clean and reusable ES6 Java. I guess you could Java. I can't type under pressure, guys. JavaScript components using dry, don't repeat yourself principles. I'm just showing you guys. I'm a really bad speller, so forgive me if I spell things wrong. It is what it is at this point. I use Grammarly. That's my secret. So now you're man, thank you so much. I really appreciate the love. And so, okay, wrote clean and reusable ES6 JavaScript components using dry principles. Okay, so what did I do next? Okay, you could take a look. What else did you do on this website? Well, we have a form here, right? And this form does form validation, which is done with JavaScript. And for some of the items, like to check that people put valid phone number here, right? That's not valid, right? It has to be something like a valid phone number would be, right? and notice now it's green. So how did I do that? I used JavaScript to accomplish that. I used regex to check that it follows the proper format that a phone number would be. So again, if this is not proper format, it causes me an error. And so on your resume, and again, on the fly, I have really hard time coming up with that, but you guys get the point. I'm talking in concretes of what I did. Implemented error handling with JavaScript, and I forget the C every time, script, and regex, whatever. And so notice again, I'm taking the things that I'm actually doing in my portfolio, and I'm talking about as the same way that I would do it on my job. Here's the thing. Here's one thing I want to tell you guys. Let me be real with you guys and why I feel this is fine to do. At my job, I do the same things I've done on my personal projects. I write the same code, I create the same components. The only difference is that at my job, I'm getting paid. But the experience that I'm getting is the same because I'm using the technologies, I'm creating the project. And this is why, talking about your personal projects in your resume in this way, as if it's your job, it's fine because it's the same thing you're doing. Like when I don't go to work and the code I write, I'll just give you a quick example here. So at my work, right, the same code I write that made this authentication work here, or implementation at least of this authentication here, or this error handling in the form, is the same code I write. I test user at email. Did I write my password right? Wrong. Probably. And so see, wrote my password. So the same implementation for error checking, and I realized I didn't show my screen, whatever. The same implementation for this personal project that I did at home, not for my job, the way I implemented like error handling here, for instance, if the error is here, or the error, like if the password is wrong or doesn't meet the length, whatever. It's the same things that I do at my job. You know what I mean? And so talk about that experience and talk about it the same way. And if I implemented error handling in my form on my personal project, it's the same way I would have done it at my work. And so the only difference between me doing it at home and at work you get paid. So talk about your experience the same way. There is no difference between what I did on my personal project and my job. The difference is that my job I get paid, but the code is the same. So here we said implemented form error handling with JavaScript and regex. Okay, so now you kind of get an idea. You have a personal project that you build yourself. You talk about the tech that you use. We use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In this case, we did error handling for form with JavaScript. And so you describe that in concrete using bullet points in your resume. Again, I'm not gonna do all of it. And again, you gotta spend some time of how you describe this. It's not going to be done as quickly as I'm doing it here. And so, but I just wanted to kind of show you here, right? So then, your next project, you completed a project with React. You still did your own HTML, CSS. And then this particular project, we connected to an API and we used the data from this pandemic API to be able to show the data for pandemic cases by country. And so this is what I would talk about. So what did I use here? I use React. And so now on my resume, okay, I build a project that I deployed with React, even though it's my project I did myself. Now I could say I use React, right? Build a pandemic tracker and whatever. And you could say, React developer, because now I'm using React, right? I build a pandemic tracker, whatever time it took you to build it, you could write here. And so now I could talk about what I did. So I could say, convert it, because you could imagine that, this project initially had a mock-up in Figma, or maybe it was written in, and you wrote that code in HTML and CSS. I'm just using that as an example. Whatever it is, you could now talk about in your resume, converted HTML and CSS components to React UI components using JSX. And notice I'm putting the keywords of the stuff that I did, HTML, CSS, React, JSX, all those important things, and I'm talking about things in concrete. So, okay, that's great. And again, please note that you will have to think about the description and the concretes you write because I'm doing this super fast. It's very important for me to just like be like upfront here to say, don't just write whatever, really spend some time. It'll like your resume, don't do it in one day, do it in like a week, and then every couple of days go back, see what you could tweak, what you could rewrite, find some good examples. But talking in concrete is important. Now we go back here. Let me close this original projects. What else did I did here? Okay, so we are getting data from an API. So I am taking that data and I'm able to display that data on screen from the API. So I'm working with an API on this project. So what I would say, how would I describe it? Again, talking in concretes. Talking in concretes, I would say used fetch API to get to query data from an API endpoint, whatever, like not a best description, but it's kind of saying like what I use. I use fetch to query data from an API endpoint using, and again, this is not a CRUD application, endpoint using get request and implemented filtering after receiving the data, or better yet, if you filtered via sending the query, actually you could be implemented filtering via URL parameters. That's kind of like what I did. And so again, I'm talking in concretes what I did. And so now I'm using API and actually using fetch, and you could say REST. It's a good keyword to use, a REST API. So now my experience I have, because this is what I did in my project, I understand what REST APIs are and how to work with them. So as you could see, I'm building out this resume based on the experience that I gained from my project. Again, we have this amazing graph here. I didn't use this graph yourself, but you could talk about resume, implemented third-party software implementation in my front-end application. So, bam. So I'm just, again, not to make this live stream longer than it has to be, I just want to showcase here. And if you guys have any questions, just let me know. I know this is getting boring, but to just kind of continue this idea of showing you how you could take your personal experience of your portfolio projects that you built and translate them into a resume, this is something you could do. And then finally, we take a look at my final project here, which is where I implemented full CRUD functionality. I implemented authentication. And so this is called Teams, whatever, Teams. And this is, okay, I'm going to say I'm a React developer. And then let's say it took me this long to make it. And so now I could say utilized Tailwind CSS to build custom React, custom reusable React components, because that's what I did in this application here. This is using Tailwind, by the way, guys. And so again, I'm talking about what I did on my personal project. And so next, sorry, I need to drink a little water. I'll do a real quick sip here. All right, then what else did you do? Well, we have authentication here. And so let's see, email, I'm just going to quickly show you this, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so I misspelled the password again, test user, very secret password. And so once you sign in, okay, so I'm demonstrating authentication. And so I could talk about that. So I could write on my resume, the one that we saw as an example. Um, Implemented user authentication with JWT token. Again, you will have to be better with descriptions. I'm just kind of writing them quickly here to give you an idea, what else I did. So notice how we have the login page, we have the dashboard page, we have different components. So how does the view change? How does the view know how to change? Well, it's because I used React Router 6 to implement Router in React. And because I did this in my personal project, I would say you implemented, okay, of something that I did, implemented React Router 6 and created private and public routes based on users' permissions, if that's what you did. And I'm just kind of showing you how, again, I am talking about my React application that I built myself, but I'm talking about it as if it was a job that I did. And obviously you should have built this application. It should be implemented, it should be deployed. You should be able to show people, but this is how you're able to talk about experience outside of your work experience in a way which will create a resume that looks like a professional resume like this. So whenever someone sees your resume, and this is kind of the one that we're working on here by example, it's starting to look and take shape of the things that you did. And again, that I talked about React Router 6 here. And so now I'm going to add, let me add the React router. So these are all the technologies that I'm using. As you could see, now I'm taking all my experience and filling it out in my resume from the projects that I did myself for my portfolio. So I don't want to beat this to death, but this should give you enough ideas of how to start creating your own professional looking resume that's actually going to get views, and at the same time you could now use when you're applying to jobs that is legit. You have the projects to back it up, and you are uh, able to do it without having job experience. So I hope this was useful. Let's open it for some questions right now, guys. So let me know if you guys have questions. I don't want to beat it to death. I showed you some examples. I feel what we talked about on this live stream is a great and amazing starting point for you guys to be able to do the work, create a successful resume. And if you have any additional questions, you can always reach me at codingafter30@gmail.com. By the way, guys, I have a private community that I was going to treat it like buy me coffee and make some cheap kind of cost where it's like $2 a month. You guys could join. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link if you guys want to join, and it's absolutely free. But one prerequisite is you guys have to send me a link to either your GitHub or your LinkedIn so that I know you're putting in some effort, to putting effort towards actually achieving the goals that you want to achieve. And so, like, I'll quickly showcase our community, and then we'll open it to questions. I'll open some questions, and Engine Boy has a really good question, and I'll answer that in just a second. But first, let me quickly showcase the community that we have. And if you want to join this community for absolutely free, there's only one prerequisite, is that you have to send me an email at codingafter30@gmail.com. And what you have to do is you have to send me a link for either your resume, your portfolio, or something that you did. And so this is the community that I have. This is a private community, so we talk about general topics, what we do. We talk about, projects. I recommend, some lessons you could do if you like to follow it. We have some actually assignments that I give out. So it's a great place to chat and talk. And so if you want to join for absolutely free, all you got to do is email me at coding after 30, but you do need to send me at least a GitHub or a portfolio link that I could see that you actually started to make the effort towards your goal and your dream. And I'm going to get to the questions now. And so, but before I do that, yeah, we'll just get to the questions here. Before I do that, here's my bad resume. As you can see, this resume was not getting me jobs. This is the new and updated resume. You could rewind and review the live stream to see how we talked about. So now I'm going to open it for questions. We have some good questions. First one to say, Ken says, I like your resume template. How can I have one? So I think I forgot, like, I'll have to look up. I think this was called Moonlight, Moon something resumes. Let me so you could Google, but basically just look how this looks. There's plenty of resume templates out there. You don't even have to purchase one. Just make sure that it follows this pattern where you have your general section of what your objection is, and it follows this kind of template where you have your contact, then you have your skills section, uh, and then you have your experience where you could talk about your actual job experience, or you could talk about your project-based experience like I talked earlier. And Ancient Boy says, do you prefer resume multiple pages, or is it okay to have just one page, I'm assuming? So it depends. So when I first started, I didn't have as much software engineering stuff. And so I did list my previous experience. So this is actually a 2-page resume. Hold on a second. This is a 2-page resume here. So this is my first page, and here it has relevant experience. And now, because I've been in the industry a little bit, I have some actual experience. And so at this point, because I have this experience, right, I have 3 companies that I worked at as a software engineer or web developer in some capacity, it's perfectly fine for me just to have one page. Now, if you don't have 3 places or maybe 4 places you worked and you have previous job experience, you could have the second page. And so originally and still now, I have all this other information where I used to own a business as a co-founder and partner of Super Kids Karate, where I taught karate, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and mixed martial arts. Then I sold insurance and marketing manager, whatever. Then I got my junior web development internship. And so I have that here because before I didn't have enough experience. But now that I have at least 3 places that you worked as a web developer or a software engineer, whatever, it's perfectly fine to have one page. So yeah, guys, so let's open it up for questions. I know sometimes everybody gets shy when we open up for questions, but the reason why I do these live streams is to make sure that I give you some value, not just based on the planned presentation that I gave, but also because you guys are asking questions. So we talked about the resume, we went over everything. You could always rewatch the stream, you could use it as reference. But with that being said, guys, let's open up to questions, and don't be shy. Don't be shy. Let me know some questions. Let me know what you guys working. Let me know about your pain points that you guys are hitting. I'd love to, kind of chat about them. So let me know. Let me know. I'm gonna, give some time. I know people are here in the chat. I see you guys are in here, so don't be shy. Let's talk about it a bit. Let's talk about it. So while you guys are thinking of questions, I want to kind of talk about the support of understanding that when you're looking to get hired as a web developer, especially if you're starting out, you have to understand that no one owes you an opportunity. And I'm not saying it just to kind of be like Debbie Downer, but I want to tell to you guys that if it's meant to happen, there's things that you guys have to do. And it's a big list of things that you should do. And it's a combination of all those things that get you hired. It's not just learning to code. And some of those items include, having a GitHub, having a LinkedIn, you know, being active in the community, actively seeking recruiters, constantly working on resume, having your portfolio page, having your portfolios in there, practicing your soft skills and how to talk about code, practicing your interviewing skills, going on interviews, regardless if you get a job or not, and following up with people that interviewed you. And actually, I just interviewed for a job, and this is a great example because during the interview, I was actually asked, what would you do if you did not get the job right now? Like, what would you do if we told you, no, you're not hired? And I literally said, I hope that's not what happens. But if that was the case, if you told me right now, look, Paul, after reviewing everything that you have done, we decided to go another avenue, or we decided to go with another candidate. So what I would say, and this is kind of what I told in the interview, I said, if that was the case, what I would say is like, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. But before I go, would you mind telling me the reason why you didn't take me? Was it my experience? Was it my code? Was it my personal skills or my, communication skills? What was the reason why you decided not to hire me? And a lot of times, even though people don't know you, a lot of times people won't say anything, but a lot of times also, not a lot of them, but half the time, people will tell you, like, look, your portfolio wasn't up to par, or we felt that you weren't able to communicate your code base to us as cleanly as we were hoping. So you're getting the answer why someone did not hire you. And why this is important is because it's important because you're literally finding out, you're not assuming, you're not guessing, but you're literally finding out what was the reason why you weren't hired. And so all those things are important. So throw your questions in the chat. At the end, we're doing our question time while we're chatting. And while I wait for questions, I'll also will give you some little things that we could talk about if you guys don't have any suggestions. But I ultimately just want to hear from you guys. And let's say Engine Boy says also, like, how to apply to jobs abroad. Do we use VPN for that to open Indeed? That's a great question. I actually never done that. And that's actually an interesting idea when you're applying to places in other countries using VPN. Like, it's very interesting. I think you got to be upfront to people. If you're abroad and you're applying to a company, um, maybe like you gotta probably be honest with them where you live. I'm just guessing at this point, because I think that there are certain restrictions depending where you live, or a company policy. So, for instance, I used to work for this one company. It's like you could work anywhere, but you have to be U.S. based, and actually, you would not be able to log in to their network, even though using VPN, because they use their own VPN to log in to do work. And so, if I went, let's say, to Thailand to stay with my fiance and wanted to work, I would not be able to do the work. So I would have to, you would definitely have to make sure you apply to companies which allow you to work from wherever places. For instance, is it internationally or within US or like whatever it is. So any other questions, guys, let me know. Let me know. I'd love to hear more. Guys, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Ask me anything. Going once, going twice, going three times. We're going to drink some nice water while on stream while you guys, this is very unprofessional, right? This is kind of like, why is he drinking on a stream? So ignorant of him. Just so I could protect my voice. But yeah, so I'm just waiting for you guys to ask some questions. To me, I think that's very important. Don't be shy. So okay, I'm going to be a little devil's advocate here. If you're not able to ask questions, I'm probably going to get dislikes for saying this. If you're not able to ask questions on the live stream, and it's fine if you don't, by the way, I'm just messing with you guys. If you're not able to ask questions on live stream because you're shy or because you think it's a silly or stupid question, like, how are you going to be able to ask questions at an interview? So here's another thing that I want to tell you about. When you start interviewing, you have to understand, by going to an interview, you have to make sure that and before I go into my little rant there, actually that makes sense because Open Indeed here always redirects to Indeed India website cannot open. Yeah, so that makes sense. Use VPN to apply to companies as of yet. So that makes perfect sense. So the point that I was about to make before coming to this awesome point, thank you, Engine Boy, is that when you're getting an interview, they want to see, are you afraid of asking questions? Are you able to communicate on the team? And are you able to do it without incentive from there? So a lot of times when people go to the interview, they assume it's a one-way conversation. Like for instance, you're interviewing and you're just having them ask you questions, and you don't ask them questions. And so that's actually really bad. Like you want to be comfortable enough that you're able to go to an interview and have questions prepared to ask of your interviewer. And so, like, I'll give you some examples, but don't just make it, about just them grilling you on stuff, right? You want to make sure there's a two-way street and you're able to showcase that you're able to communicate. Even though you're getting a job as a developer, guess what? You're working on a team. Communication is very important. Also, how do you react in tough situations? Let's say when someone is upset and they're being like upset at you, even though you didn't do anything. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that interaction? All of that is important. So when you're at an interview, being able to communicate and asking questions is very important. And so when I go to interviews, I make sure, even though sometimes it doesn't feel natural, to have some good questions that I could ask the interviewer. Like for instance, when you're getting hired, um, what is your policy on onboarding process for new employers? Like, what do you do? Do I work with a body? Like, what should I expect the first 2 weeks? Don't be shy. Ask questions. It's very important. One of the things I remember, I was in an interview a while ago. They were working with React and a bunch of other stuff. So I asked, like, hey, I know you're building this application. And I looked at your website and project. What were some of the challenges you guys were running into? And you're probably like, well, why would you ask that in an interview? I don't know. Like, to me, it felt relevant. And so they actually told me like some of the things they were doing, some of the tech they were using. And I said, oh, like that's awesome, because of my previous experience or my previous project, I had a similar situation, and this is how I solved that problem. So do you see how by asking questions, I'm able to get certain things that align with what the interviewer is looking for, and I'm able to answer my questions, not by guessing, but actually able to give them stuff that they're looking for. And this is why I feel like when you're doing interviews, it's very important for you guys to not be shy about asking questions. And this brings me back to this concept. This is a great way and place for you to practice asking questions on this community where no one's going to judge you and no one's going to get upset. But I just want to see, like, hey, if you guys have questions about anything, and I'm here. Like there's a reason why this is a live stream, because I do really care about what you guys are thinking. What are you guys struggling with? What are the certain things that you're getting stuck on? And I want to make sure that I'm able to help you. And if I don't have an answer, I'm going to tell you that I don't have an answer. Let's look it up together. So I want you guys to feel that you're part of this conversation, and I want to hear from you guys. I think, what I want to try one day, let me know if it's a good idea. I want to do the live stream, but I also want to do it at the same time, like a Twitter Spaces, where you guys are joining and you're able to talk and talk about your information. And so here, let me look at here in a second. So Sharon says here, hey, I've checked out your personal portfolio website. FYI, I noticed there's some lorem ipsum above your contact form. Let's check it out. Look at that. Great eye. And I hope, let's check it out. And see, fantastic. Let's go to here. paulbraslavsky.com. No, it's not Paul. Paul Braslavsky. It's so rough to type my own name sometimes. Oh, by the way, that's actually a good idea here. I just want to showcase something. So Sharon says she went to my personal website. So this is like a great idea here. So here I am at Google. And so sometimes when you're applying to companies, people will just go ahead and Google your name, right? They'll Google your name. And so before I go and check that, Sharon, which will be a good eye on your half if that's the case, which I'm pretty sure it is, because half the time I'm not perfect, make mistakes. But here's the thing. So I have my paulbraslavsky.com website. So if someone types my name, they get that site. Also, look, LinkedIn pops up, GitHub pops up, Twitter comes up. So you want to be, if you're looking to get a job developer, and I was really late on jumping on Twitter, but it's important to have communities in those places. So you have, Paul Braslavsky, my website. You have Paul Braslavsky, LinkedIn. You have GitHub. And actually, that's a good practice. Let's take a look at all of those here. By the way, that's pictures of me. This is, oh wow, you even see that I made this site like so long ago. Even that comes up in Google. This was one of like long time ago. I made this site like so long ago. Wow. This is the like this wow. Memory lane. Well, 2019. Wow. I totally forgot about that. Um, there's some images, a bunch of stuff, whatever, irrelevant. But notice the most relevant stuff that comes up is my site. Let's take a look at this site. Sharon says that I have some lorem ipsum. Good eye. My internet here is slow, by the way, where I'm at the moment, so no worries. So this is my portfolio resume site. So before contact, resume, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I have to change that. Sharon, you are a God save. Thank you so much. Man, I stare at my own site so much that, you know, it's I make a mistake. I'm not going to change it on stream, but it's very easily fixable. So I'm going to do that. Sharon, thank you so much. Love you. You're the best, Sharon. Thanks so much. Okay, but coming back to this idea. No, that's awesome, man. Listen, this is why I'm doing this stuff because I want to show you I am some random dude online. You go to my previous videos. When I started posting on YouTube long ago, I had no web dev job. And over time, through making mistakes and practicing the things that I'm talking about right now, I got to a point where I am a software engineer. And so I'm not saying this like I want to be open with you guys. I want to show you that I put out stuff when it's not perfect. And this is a great example for a motto that I follow. Done is better than perfect, right? Done is better than perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect because you could go back and you could fix the things. And so when you do search for Paul Braslavsky, the most relative things come up for, and let's take a look at the branding. Let's take a look at the branding. So we already saw my website, right? About talking about the tech that I use, the skills that I do, part of my resume, great stuff. Now we go, let's see, LinkedIn, Paul Braslavsky on LinkedIn. Look at this. And again, this is all the stuff I talk about. And if you like more, subscribe to this channel, blah, 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 blah. But more importantly, this is what I talk at these Saturday live streams is about the soft skills, the stuff you need to get hired, like the resume stuff that we talked about today. So look, the branding between my portfolio site and my linked site matches. Like again, like I have so many recruiters that, kind of contacting me, which is great. I have a little thing that I did that matches my branding. So when people go from here to here, they're like, oh, not surprised. It showcases the tech that I'm using, the stuff that I do, my basic LinkedIn. And so you definitely need to have, oh, wow, look at that. GitHub shows up. I guess if I'm looking to get a job as a web developer, it's important to have a GitHub account. And so my GitHub shows up. Again, the picture is consistent on my GitHub to my LinkedIn to my portfolio. So notice I'm trying to have a particular branding across those things. And as you could see, I'm doing stuff on GitHub. Doesn't have to be this crazy for you guys. By the way, when I first started GitHub in 2013, look, lazy, didn't apply myself. 2014, lazy, did not apply myself. 2015, I don't know what I was doing. Don't be Paul Braslavsky and um, don't like waste your time like I did. 2016 didn't apply. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of not applying myself. So don't wait. Start doing these things now. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. We're killing it, right? I took my desire to get hired as a developer serious. So I have the history not only to show you where I succeeded, but also to show you where I failed. And so notice how by you want to own the first, when people search Paul Braslavsky or your name, you should have your website like we have here. You have your LinkedIn. We have here all the important socials. You have, your GitHub, people able to find me on LinkedIn because, not LinkedIn, but Twitter. We even have Twitter here. On Twitter, I used a different picture. I want it to be more friendlier. Oh, this is the wrong Twitter. This is one I used to be a while ago. That's interesting. So here's an interesting example here. So I used to do MMA and I used to have a different Twitter. And here's an example where I need to fix this because the Twitter for Paul Braslavsky leads them here. So what I have to do, either delete this, which I do have to delete this because I don't do this because this is not my Twitter. If I go to Twitter, this is my Twitter. And so, see, like this is one thing I have to tweak. I have to make sure that when people search my name, Paul Brasowski, that it takes them to the appropriate place where, you know, it's um, related to the things that I'm doing. So this is one way. But the point that I'm saying to you, you gotta make sure when people search your name, you gotta make sure that you have relevant stuff that pops up for web development stuff. And you know, I have CodePen, I have other stuff. I also have coding after 30, codingafter30.com. And the point that I'm trying to say to you guys, it's doing all these little things that help you to promote yourself as a developer, to help you stand out and apply yourself to get these jobs. It's not just learning to code, but it's also about self-marketing yourself and doing all this stuff. And again, my internet is a little bit slow, but that's okay. And so whatever this site loads, we'll come back to it. But what I'm saying, let me look at some questions here, is that getting a job in web development, especially if you're switching careers like I did, and um, getting it done without a college degree, whatever your path is, it doesn't matter. But you have to understand that if you want something, it's not just learn the skill, because there's lots of people that have computer science degree. There's lots of people that graduated from boot camp. You have to market yourself and show people why should they take you, where you stand out. And this is when I tell people, it's a combination of all the things that you do, and I will talk more about it. But all the jobs that I had were a result of not just one thing that I did, but out of all the things that I was doing. And let me show you. I also have a Coding After 30 website where I have some articles. Um, you know, and I'm not saying you have to have a blog, but I think if you have a blog, if you have a um, something where you could share things you're working on, your experience, showing code examples, like showing that you are involved in the community, is very important. So it's a combination of doing lots of things right to get noticed and to showcase your experience, because no one will ever show up at your house. Like no one is gonna come up to your house, ring the doorbell, be like, you're hired. That's never gonna happen. And so the reason why I make these videos, the reason why I do these live streams, is because I want to tell you the truth, that you could spend a lot of time waiting for an opportunity that will never show up. And the few people that I talked to that started my community that got jobs, they didn't just get jobs because they waited for opportunity. They got jobs because they keep applying, not only the like do the things that they're supposed to do, but actually having a feedback cycle, being like, hey, I did this for 2 weeks, it didn't get me anywhere, maybe I'm doing something wrong. And kind of tracking your progress is super important. That's a nice loader on your website, Coding After 30. Yeah, that website is, I believe, it hosted on WordPress, and that's a theme that I purchased. But yeah, I really like that loader too. It's pretty cool, pretty cool. And so there's certain times for certain things. Like if you have a blog, you don't have to build it yourself. If you just want to showcase the content, use WordPress. Even your portfolio site, I use a template. The only things that I build myself are the items in my portfolio. And so it's a combination of doing a lot of different things to get hired. So again, let's do last few questions. I'm really feeling my voice going. We hit 1 hour and 30 minutes. By the way, if you're just jumping in and you have a special like button, I don't blame you. But what I'm going to tell you guys, we covered so much good content at the beginning and the middle and pretty much all of this stream until we open it up to questions like we're doing now. So if you missed the beginning of the stream, I highly, highly suggest go back and rewatch it. Watch it on 2 times speed, or listen to it, or what have you, because there's a lot of good information that you guys will benefit. And that's why I wanted to put out this live stream, because I feel like a lot of us feel or struggle at creating a resume that helps us get noticed. And that was an issue for me. And I showed you my bad resume that totally did not work for me. And I'll kind of show it again. And you can always come back and watch the stream. This resume that I did before got me 0 callbacks. And then did I close my resume? Let me open up my resume that I now use. Give me a second before I go, just to kind of show you what a resume should look like. A resume should look like. So, and if you want to learn more about how to create this resume or kind of the key points that I made earlier, just rewatch the beginning of the stream. So this is my new updated resume that works really, 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 really amazing. And so, um, this is, I had recruiters look at my resume. They're like, wow, great job. Looks good. Fantastic. So we basically talked about how going from a really terrible looking, I forgot, I probably already closed the terrible looking resume, to a really good resume, talking about the structure. You could always find a good template. This is a template that I bought. But the most important part, you don't have to spend money on templates. Just understand the structure, like your object, like what you want to like get or gain, what your objection, you have your contact, you have your skills. There are keywords that automatic machines could pick up, your experience. And this is what I talked about in this whole live stream. So if you missed it, rewatch it, how to talk about your personal projects in this manner. This is my work experience, but I did show you how to do it with your personal project, how and why you should do bullet points, writing stuff in concretes, like of what you did, translate a Figma mockup in a clean, reusable React, utilize GraphQL API to perform CRUD functionality and update. And so that's what I talked about previously on this live stream. So if you missed it, go check it out for sure. And that's kind of what I want to say. So let's look. Any last questions? Final thoughts? Thanks, Engine Boy. I already looked at this. Hey, Frank, great to see you. Thanks for sharing, man. I miss you, man. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. Um, Engine Boy says, by the way, I'm following Dennis Django to build my bug tracker backend. And that's fantastic. By the way, the things that I tell you to do and why I tell you to do them, you don't have to do them exactly. And so Engine Boy is doing Python. There's nothing wrong with doing Python. There's nothing wrong with using Django to build your backend. And I think that's awesome. The most important point that I'm trying to make is that you building stuff yourself from scratch, you building your own portfolio project to showcase, you're able to clearly talk about the code that you wrote. So when people ask questions about it, someone should be able to go randomly through your code, pick any place in it, and you should be able to have an answer. And I could do that with my projects. And it takes time to get there, but you'll never get there until you start building stuff from scratch. So the point is, have a plan, have a path, and execute. You know what I mean? And it will never be perfect. Like today, we found out that one of my websites had, from my template that I used, had lorem ipsum in it that I should probably remove. So everybody makes mistakes. But look, if you never put it out there, you're never going to get feedback. And done will always beat perfect. Done will always beat perfect. And I have many, many examples through my life where that's the case. And so with that being said, guys, just want to say lots of love. I love you guys. If you missed the stream, we already passed the hour and a half mark easily. And I wish I could talk more, but I'm going to lose my voice and I want to save it so I could come back next stream. So you could find me Tuesdays and Saturdays here at 9 p.m. Eastern time. On Tuesday stream, we talk about like actual coding. I'm building a project on live stream. Basically, watch me fail, building things and breaking things. It's very common. So I want to show you all those things. Number two, on Saturdays, I talk about, like I did today, the soft skills, the resume, LinkedIn, marketing yourself. How do you go and build relationships to get that first job? And with that being said, on social, like I'm not really big on too much social, but you could find me on Twitter at coding30, and that's basically where I'm at. But mostly doing these lives for you guys. And I just want to say, don't give up. Continue to do what you're doing. Please understand, though, uh, there's a lot of YouTube content where people are making money off YouTube, and that's fine. I have nothing against that. But they have to create content that's like, popular on YouTube. And a lot of that content is probably not the content that's actually going to help you make a difference in your life. Um, it's stuff that people just entertain to watch and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong making money off YouTube. But you have to understand there's certain content has a certain agenda. And so not like there's a lot of good content, by the way, on YouTube, better than my channel, 1000%. But what I want to tell you guys, you have to use your judgment and understand there's um, steps that people take that actually work. And this is why I have this channel, to not tell you what to do, but to tell you what I did and tell you about things that worked for me, things that didn't work, and if I were to do things differently, what would I do? So basically, learn from my failures, learn from my mistakes, so you guys don't have to make them. I don't have an agenda. I don't have a course to save. I don't make money on this YouTube. I use this YouTube for 3 reasons. Number 1, to stay in touch with you guys, the community. Number 2, to practice my communication skills. That's why I have 2 particular streams. Tuesday, I talk about code because I want to practice talking about my code, coding live. So that actually prepares me to be better at talking about code in an interview. So I'm gaining that experience, right? That's my value from my channel, right? Not monetary, but experience, because the goal for me at the end of the day is to be a better developer at my job, not to make money off YouTube. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Like, if one day YouTube makes money for me, it's just not my goal right now. And so for me, I use YouTube as a learning tool, and at the same time share with you guys what I'm learning. But at the same time, it has helped me to improve my communication, helped me improve coding live, and not feeling stressed out. It helped me to make connections online, all these benefits. And at the same time, you guys have my experience and my path. It's all open like an open book. You could always ask me questions. And so that's the value that I bring, is the real life mistakes and experience that I did. And you take it for what it is. But at the end of the day, before I end this live stream, and Frank, it'll be great to hear from you for sure. And before I go, I just want to say, um, the reason, and I know this is going to be stupid and sound weird, the reason why I have the stream is because I'm recording it right now. I'm doing the action, the step. I'm putting it out for sure. The reason why I have projects in my portfolio is because at one point I realized, damn, all these projects that I'm starting and never finishing is not getting me anywhere. Let me finish a project for my portfolio, and I actively do it until I complete it, and then I have it, right? So it's not just wishful thinking and knowing what the right thing to do. It's doing those steps. And I know it's obvious, and there's a reason why sometimes we don't do it. And I made that mistake, and because of that, I could have been a software engineer 5 years ago, but I'm not. I got a job, you know, at 39 where I could have gotten at 35, 36, 37 because I wasted time. I didn't do the action. I didn't follow through. And so if you take anything from my live streams, please understand things are hard, but you have to follow through and you have to do the work. So with that being said, I love you all wherever you are. I hope you have great rest of the weekend. I hope you guys are healthy, safe, and all the positive things happen in your life. So thank you so much. I will see you guys on my next stream. Bye-bye.